Welcome, everyone, to another edition, another episode of Eight Principles Voices. And I have with me today a delightful young lady, Ruth Kathumbi. Hello, Ruth. How are you?
I'm doing so well, Larry. How are you?
I'm great. And Ruth is the founder and principal consultant at, let me get this right, Quelle Consulting. Is that right? Did I get it right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's perfect.
And she's in Houston, Texas, of course, right? So I'm so
Yes.
glad you're joining me today. Uh, what I'd like to, there's so much to cover. And, and Ruth and I had a brief conversation before we started it, and there's so much I want to cover. But the first thing I'd like to ask is, you obviously have a background in fundraising. You've done that before. You've been a frontline fundraiser, and yet now, in just a few months, you decided to be a consultant. So can you tell me a little bit about what went into making that decision and why you wanted to do it?
Yes. Thank you so much. That's a great question. You know, I think my entire fundraising career, there was something inside of me that wanted to do consulting, even though I didn't have the language for it, because I saw what would end up becoming kind of a through line through my career of ways that nonprofits could do things in a better, more efficient way, a more intentional way, but just depending on where I was working or the position that I held at the time, I wasn't necessarily able to give that kind of information to help bring along the just dramatic shift that I felt a lot of nonprofits needed to do fundraising in a way that was sustainable and strategic and not so transactional. So even when I was first getting into the nonprofit field in, let's say, 2012, every time I would go to a workshop, learn something, I would save it in a folder for the time that I would become a consultant. So I have this huge wealth of information that I've been waiting for this moment for. But it wasn't until 2022 when I had my daughter, who's going to be two, that I really started thinking about making it a career shift because legacy is so important to me. And I wanted her to watch her mother grow something that she was passionate about. And it was just really, it changed everything about my life as becoming a mother typically does. But what I wasn't expecting was it to change how I felt about my career path. And it became more important to me to build something that I'm not expecting her to want to become a fundraising consultant, but having something that I could pass on and having her watch me build something like I watched my father do. He was a missionary, my first foray into the nonprofit field. And I watched him build nonprofit organizations from the ground up, and it planted a seed in me. And I just really wanted her to have that as well. So I decided to take a huge leap of faith and start my own consulting company.
That's a wonderful story. Wow.
Thank
Now,
you.
now I know you told me that you were born in this country, but your parents are from Kenya, correct?
Yes, yes. My parents came from Kenya in the 80s with my older brother. He was a baby. They came for us. They always told us the reason why we came to America is for you to have a better future, more opportunities to be able to get a great education. And so, even when they were coming here, they were thinking about legacy. And so, it's really important to me to kind of carry that on. Both my parents have passed away. And so, when I do the work that I do, it's very much kind of a tribute to everything they sacrificed to bring us here.
Well, the apple doesn't far fall from the tree, Ruth. You're doing the same thing with your own daughter. And
Thank you.
that's fascinating. No one's ever told me that before. I mean, you've made my day. All right. So the name of your firm, Quelle, you said is Swahili for trust. So tell me why trust was so important to you. Why did you choose that word?
Oh, that's a great question. It's funny. I stumbled into the fundraising field. I initially did not want to be a fundraiser because I had a lot of mistrust with sales. And I really thought that fundraising equated to sales and specifically in my head, car salesman, and so it was something that I felt very averse to and I wanted to
maybe
avoid it.
maybe used car salesman. Is that what
Used
you're
car
thinking?
salesman, exactly. A very specific brand of used car salesman, in fact, is what I had in my head. And then when I started getting into the work, I realized that it is really about building trust. And trust is so important to me. It's a huge part of my life. And so I learned that if I could build a relationship based on trust, not just with myself and my donor, but between the donor and the mission, that the fundraising work would just be a lot more meaningful for everyone, including myself. So trust really is what brought me to a place of loving and being passionate about fundraising, because not only is it something that I care about personally, but it's something that I think is a cornerstone of fundraising that a lot of people forget about. And when it comes to consulting, I think it's also true there, where I've talked when I was kind of doing market research for my consulting business. A lot of people told me, you know what, Ruth, I've had a consultant. They gave me a lot of buzzwords. We paid them a lot of money. Nothing happened. I don't know if I'd ever use a consultant again. And I heard that over and over. And
Really?
so again, I felt that there was a little bit of a lack, oh, a lot. I heard that a lot,
Oh,
that people had put trust in consultants and were not giving back what they expected. And that could be for a myriad of reasons, miscommunication. I had to dig into what happened, but it really made me feel like there was a lack of trust in the consulting business too. And so I wanted to be, forward with saying, even though it's in a different language, but very forward in saying that this organization is built on trust and I want you to feel like you can trust us.
mm, well, that's wonderful. Wow. Well, so you now you've what? It's what, 6 months you've been doing this, or a little more, or how long have you
A
been?
little less,
A little
a
less.
little less.
Okay. But obviously you were thinking about this for a while. This isn't
I
something
have.
you just
Mhm.
kind of got up one day and said, okay, I'm going to be a consultant. Okay. It wasn't like that.
Exactly.
So, uh, do you have do you have a sense of what your ideal client will be? And I don't mean that necessarily in the area or size, but more in the personality, or you can answer it any way you like. I mean, do you have a sense of the kinds of organizations you really want to focus on?
Yes. Organizations that are ready. That is the most important thing. I have worked with small, and I'll say work in terms of I did a lot of pro bono consulting work before I started my company. And I've just given a lot of advice and guidance to organizations that are small, mid-size, larger. And across the board, I would say the biggest hindrance to having a successful engagement with the consultant is a lack of readiness. And when I say ready, I don't mean ready to make more money, because I think every organization feels ready to make more money. We need more money yesterday.
Yesterday.
That is
I was going to say that
yesterday.
too. Yesterday.
So when I say, are you ready for me? Obviously they'll say, yes, 100%. We're ready. We were ready for you last week. But what it really means is, are you ready to do the work? Are you ready to get really introspective, which can be hard? Start asking and answering some hard questions truthfully about what brought us to this point. What are some hurdles that maybe we have in our blind spot that we haven't even considered, that an outside perspective can share with us? And are we ready to take an outside perspective and move with it? And it's not to say that they should take every single thing that I say. I understand they know the organization more than I do. But I do think a willingness and a readiness to kind of get messy is really important, because this work can reveal some things about us that we didn't know. I mean, money is very sensitive and it has a lot of trigger points for a lot of people. Just talking about money, discussing how we think about money can bring up a lot of things that people didn't even know they had. And it can almost become, a therapy session. So being ready to talk about how we got here and what we need to do to get to a new place is very important. If someone is ready, I will meet them wherever they are and we will take it as slow or as quickly as we need to. But readiness is by far the most important thing.
You are a veteran, Ruth, and you've only been doing it a few months, let me tell you. Um, uh, you've captured the essence of this. And one, you brought up the whole issue of money. I've been in this business a long time, and one thing that I've noticed is the number one obstacle to raising money is having a dysfunctional view of money. It gets in the way,
Yes.
and you've seen it too, I'm sure. Um, Very wise, Ruth. You're wise way beyond your years, let me tell you. Very
Thank
perceptive.
you.
I love that very much. So, are you focusing on faith-based, non-faith-based, any kind of particular area that where your heart is, or are you just going to be looking for people who are ready?
Definitely looking for people who are ready, but I love all organizations. I think my heart is really in human service organizations.
Mhm.
So, and that's a huge spectrum, and that could be faith-based, non-faith-based, but I think just anything that really serves humanity, people is something that I'm really passionate about. Like I said, my dad, he was a missionary. The first organization that he started that I was really a part of when I was young was an orphanage for kids whose parents passed away from HIV back in Kenya. And I think that was really the beginning of me understanding. I don't like the term voiceless, but there are people whose voices are not listened to and amplified enough. And so I love any organization who's doing work amplifying marginalized voices. That's just it really close to my heart. And so if I can help them raise more money, I would love to do that. But I really love all mission-based organizations. If you have a mission and you're passionate about it, I would love to help you.
Okay. All right. Um, do you have any? I love this part. Do you have any war stories or little vignettes you'll share with us?
I have hundreds, hundreds. I'm a general. I've had so many. Let's see. Well, would you like an inspiring war story? Would you just any kind would
Well, I
do?
like inspiring, but you choose what you want. This is your time.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about my first ever gala because in Texas, galas are a huge hallmark of what we do in terms of fundraising. But this one in particular will stay with me always just because of how it happened. So I got hired to work at this organization as its executive director approximately 5 weeks before the largest fundraiser they have annually. We were tasked to raise $500,000. Said gala is Christmas themed and it entails an auction of at least 400 items, including, but not limited to, a dozen or more fully decorated Christmas trees of various sizes and wreaths. And so there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving parts. And I was brand new. And I'll just say that Christmas had never really been my thing. So in terms of decorations, that just wasn't something that I was good at. So, and I was 27. So, needless to say, there was a lot happening. But in the midst of all of this, we were also hiring an assistant for myself. We hired a lovely young woman, and she was a bit overwhelmed. And the day before the gala, we were setting up. I was with these incredible workers who came from the organization we raised money for, and they volunteered their time and helped us so much. It was at 11 o'clock. I took them to a staple. If you've never been to Texas, you need to go to this place. It's called Whataburger, and
Oh,
it's open late night, so we love it very much. You have to go if you've never been. And I took them there as a thank you, and I got a phone call at 11 o'clock at night that said uh, that was from my assistant saying she was quitting. And so that was 10 hours before we were supposed to start everything and set up and bring in 600 people in ball gowns to this event that I was going to be now doing alone. So the next day I wake up, just said a prayer. I can do this, said some affirmations in the car, get there. The one of the chairs of the gala was incredibly intoxicated. I mean, there was no it was a problem. And so the entire
it,
night,
was this in the morning? What time of day was this?
this was at 9 o'clock in the morning.
In the morning, and they were
Nine
already
o'clock in
three
the morning.
sheets to the wind.
In
All
the morning.
right. Okay.
in the morning.
Whoa.
So there's some babysitting happening, there's some setup happening. Their volunteers are asking me, where do I put this tree? Where do I put this Fabergé egg? Lots of really expensive items are coming in. And then to top it all off, the very last thing, someone comes in and says, with um, a briefcase handcuffed to their arm, and says, I am here. I am the custodian of the gun. And I did not know what was happening. And they said, we're here to auction off the gun. You didn't know, but I'm the custodian of the gun. I have to be with the gun the entire day. So I had to manage all of these moving pieces, including the inebriated chair who now wanted to play with the gun. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot, I will say. At some point, we were also dropped off a puppy who was being auctioned off at the live auction.
Ruth, you can't
Um,
make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up.
I always watch The Office and think, is this based on my life? Like, it was just an incredible series of misfortunate events that were taking place all at one time. But we got through it. The event happened. And that's the great thing I think about special events is I always say it's a train, it's coming, you just get on, like it's happening.
Yeah.
So you just kind of roll with the punches. People don't really notice all the drama that's happening. So it was great in that people had an incredible time. So I thought that I had made it. And then at the end of the night, the woman who bought the puppy comes to me in tears. She paid $12,000 for this very cute puppy, golden retriever. And then she comes to me in tears and says, my husband says I can't keep it. You have to take it home. So now at the end of the night, me and a very adorable puppy had an incredible time trying to make sure, they were not yet potty trained. So we had very fun night trying to get that together in my apartment, my very tiny apartment, until we could figure out who could take this dog. So yes, it was just so fun, but I love a trial by fire. Every gala since then has been easy, right? A breeze, because I think everything that could possibly have gone wrong happened on that day. And I actually still love doing special events. So if people are still having luncheons, galas, that is absolutely part of my consulting business. I love a special event. And I usually will pull that story out for people when their special event is having some trouble, just to remind them, trust me, it could get worse. This is good. We'll make it.
Mhm. That is quite the story, Ruth.
It
Uh,
was,
dare
it
I
was, it
ask
was fun.
the unanswered question? Did you meet your goal?
We exceeded our goal.
Okay, all
We
right.
exceeded our goal. We got very lucky because I will say something that a lot of nonprofits make the mistake of not investing in, and I highly recommended it. I had hired an incredible auctioneer, very last minute. They had never had a professional auctioneer before, but I felt like we needed it. They were incredible and they had people double up on their items. And so we sold a lot of items twice, three times, even if the person wasn't getting an item just to give to the mission. And so our live auction put us way over the top and it was very exciting. So, highly recommend getting a skilled live auctioneer if you're having an event.
Okay, all right, all right. Oh wow. So what's next, Ruth? Now you've got your consulting firm. You've been at it a few months. Where do you think this is going to take you? What I mean by that is
Mm,
think of 2 years from now or 3 years from now. Where would you like to be?
That's a great question. Let's see. In 3 years, I would love to have maybe five really steady clients. I love the idea of long term engagements, being able to bring an organization from um, maybe the crux or the intersection of the next level and take them through that next level and then maybe into another level. So having some long-term clients that we're really doing deep work with to figure out how can we transform their philanthropic endeavors, how can we transform their major giving. um, I love bringing new programs to organizations. So in 5 years, I would love to have a really strong planned giving and major giving, maybe a module or something that I'm really honing in on those things for organizations, because I think major giving for sure. A lot of people have major giving officers and they say that they have major giving plans, but the way that they're being done, I think, needs some work in a lot of cases. So, a really strong major giving curriculum program work that I'm doing with organizations on a long term basis. And then, same thing with plan giving, because I think plan giving is a huge area of opportunity, but it's very nuanced. And some organizations, I think, are afraid to embark on it just because it's kind of a hard conversation. But I'm someone who has dealt with a lot of grief in my life. So I'm very comfortable having conversations about planning for those times in the future. And I think there's a way to do it that doesn't make it sad or depressing, that actually just makes it very meaningful and impactful to think about. So I would love to be bringing more plan giving and major giving programs to organizations who need them. And I would say finally, I would love to have a couple staff members. I haven't, now that I'm consulting, I'm not managing anybody. I mean, I'm managing myself, and then I have a boss who's my 2-year-old daughter. But other than that, I have not managed in a long time, and I miss that a little bit. And so maybe having 2 or 3 other consultants working with me would be really great. So, yeah, I think that's where I'd like to be in a couple of years.
Well, if I were younger, I might call you up and ask for a job.
You
Um,
can work for me. We are not ageist. I would love that.
oh, um, this has been really, really delightful. Yeah, you're going to go places. There's no question about that. And the reason why is, and I'm going to come from my own background too. Trust is critical. It's critical when working with a client, and trust requires that there's candor at the same time. And then there's trust when dealing with an investor. It's what I call donors. And as we said earlier, way too many organizations now see their donors impersonally and not as
Mhm.
living, breathing human beings with their own foibles, their own insecurities, their own
Yeah.
aspirations, their own disappointments, um, and like we all have. Um, that will take you far. And I think that you're going to find out that, um, and we can come back in a couple of years and see if this is true. But I think you're going to find that your clients will self-select you. All right,
I
because
love that.
because you're not vanilla. Okay, you are tutti frutti. Okay, you've got a particular flavor. All right, and either people are going to like you or they're not, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Is that they want because of you. So, um,
Oh
well,
my
is there
gosh.
any?
Thank you so
Well,
much.
now before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say?
That's a great question. I think I'll piggyback on what you just said about people. What I have learned in my career, especially being a fundraiser during the pandemic, is that people really need more care. And fundraising is a way to care for people. And I had not thought about that until maybe I was deep in my career having conversations with donors and realizing, especially people who get to a certain level in terms of capacity and wealth, that they are not cared for by people. And some, they have families sometimes, but people who are working with them professionally, a lot of times they are just looking for what they can get out of those people. And they just really are moved when someone truly authentically cares about them, ask questions about them, I know so much about my donors' families and what's happening in their lives because we talk and I let them talk more than I talk, which, I talk a lot. So I've had to work on that. But it has been the best thing I've ever done in my career because, like you said, you learn so much about people's disappointments and their dreams and their aspirations. And sometimes it just clicks for you that, oh, this program is a much better fit than what I've been talking to them about. I want to talk to them about this. And it works out and they give significantly more, or they become a long term donor that you never thought you had the ability to get. So I just think really looking at donors as people, talking to them, calling without any ask, just to call and say, "How are you? Are you okay?"
What a
has
wonderful
been the most impactful thing I have done in my career, especially during the pandemic. Was my line was, "Do you have toilet paper?" And people would crack up laughing and, we would have a conversation and they would tell me, I've gotten a lot of phone calls from essentially every organization I give to asking for money. No one has asked me if I'm okay. And I learned a lot of things that people's family members were ill and people were going through things. Money doesn't insulate people from problems. So
No,
just because you have a donor who's a major donor doesn't mean they don't have issues. So call them, check on them, see how they're doing. It's so, so impactful and it's a wonderful use of your time.
okay. I tell you, if I'd met someone like you back when I was doing institutional work that applied for a principal gifts position, I'd hire you on the spot, Ruth. I wouldn't. It would just be
Oh,
like, whoa,
wow.
whoa, um, because the skill of what we do is so minor. It's the character of what we do
Yeah.
that makes all the difference. It really does. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been having a delightful conversation with Ruth Githumbi. Think I got that right.
Thank you. It's
And
perfect.
and she's the principal at Quelly Consulting. And I really like the fact that it's Swahili for trust. That's very meaningful. I think everything about Ruth is really genuine, and I'm really pleased to have met her, and I certainly wish her well in the future. So thank you, Ruth, for taking your time today.
Oh my gosh, likewise. It has been such an incredible pleasure to meet you, get to know you. I've learned so much. I appreciate the platform and I know this is the beginning. We'll have a long-term friendship.
Mm, thank you. Well, soon, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have another episode of A Principal's Voices with yet another really, really interesting and authentic person. Thank you for viewing and listening to this.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.